Hey, tennis fans, you are listening to Match Point Canada, the official podcast of Tennis Canada. I'm Ben Lewis, and very happy this week to be joined by Canadian tennis player, commentator, broadcaster, Sharon Fichman, who returns to the podcast. Sharon, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Just surviving the winter.
yeah, I mean, we all are. As we speak today, we finally actually have the sunshine out, which has been a rarity this winter. I guess I'll ask you. I mean, I saw you in the broadcast booth for Billie Jean King Cup, which was fun. Canada not winning this time around, but having a Canada winning this time around, which was incredible. Just for you, what's kept you occupied the last few months, maybe tennis wise, career wise, and yeah, what's keeping you busy?
Yeah, so it's been busy for me. I had like a it was so much fun calling the matches for the Billie Jean King Cup and watching Canada make history, getting to call those matches and see it point by point. It was really amazing. It's such a special moment for Canadian tennis. The whole Canadian tennis program really, like at one point, we're on top of the world, really. Billie Jean King Cup
Hmm.
champs, Davis Cup champs for that moment in time, which is extraordinary. And then after that, really just transitioning to focusing on myself and my own health and rehab and everything. And so that's been like a long process for me ever since I think I've been on the podcast the last couple of years. I've been battling, so I'm still fighting the good fight.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I've also, while I've been managing all my things, I still really involved with coaching, really involved with Tennis Canada and helping where I can in the high performance space, predominantly with the juniors. I've been on court a little bit here and there with some of the pros that are kind of passing through. Seen Carol Zhao while she's been in Toronto, also Kayla Cross. I've pretty close with her and I've worked with her quite a bit more supplementarily and also just practicing because we have the same coach. So that's been really fun. Definitely intend to keep the TV stuff going when I have the opportunities and keeping busy with coaching until, yeah, I sort of figure out my path with return to play.
Yeah, I want to get into coaching and juniors in a moment, but I'd love to ask you about the broadcasting side because it's always interesting for me seeing former players in the commentary booth and sort of how they're viewing a match, their perspective. How is it for you as a player and someone who has played at the highest level of the game, sitting on the sidelines watching a match and do you find you're viewing it from a more analytical or tactical perspective? Or are you thinking like, what would I do in this situation? And is it difficult in a sense?
I've never lost a match from the sidelines personally.
Hmm.
So definitely not more difficult. It's really
Yeah.
challenging when you're on the court. So, I definitely feel for the players that are out there. I know how it is. I also know how much more clearly I'm able to think when I'm seeing it from above. I find when I'm in the broadcast booth commentating, just laughing. Like I'll chat with, I've been working with Arash. I work with Arash, for example, recently for the Billie Jean King Cup. And, at one point, I think he called me Coach Fitchman, but on the side, or especially during commercial breaks, I'm like, oh my God, she's just got to really pressure that girl's forehand just all day. Use that backhand down the line, get there, do that. And I have like my tactics going in my head as the match is unfolding or as the points going. I'm like, okay, you got to do that. If you got to do this play right now, in my head, obviously it's not always applicable to say when you're calling the match in the middle of the point, blurting out. So I try and find a balance of, just constantly narrating my thoughts because I have a lot of tactical ideas. That's sort of always been my game style too. As a player, I'm not the tallest, I'm not the strongest. I didn't hit the hardest. I think for my size I did, but against girls that were twice my size, I could just probably hit the ball close to as hard as them if I was really feeling myself. So I always had to play tennis like chess and sort of be able to analyze their technique and analyze their tendencies and their grips and all that stuff and their tosses and things to be able to figure out if I could, you know, see what hole is I can expose, or especially, under pressure moments, like based on their technique or their tendencies, are there certain plays they tend to do? Are there certain shots they look to hit? And I find that that really helps me a lot when I'm commentating. Just being able to see it from that bird's eye view. I actually feel I do an even better job than when I'm on the court. Um, and I try my best when I'm calling the match to say, like, she's got to do this. I really feel like this is something that's important, or I love that she's doing that. She's got to keep doing that. Or, in this moment, I think the best play right now would be to, hit a slider wide and then XYZ, or look to get to the net. Ton of swing volleys in this match, or all that stuff. So, I find sometimes, there's a lot going on. I hope it comes
Hmm.
across well when I'm calling the match and it's not overload. I do get that note in my ear, like, Sharon, sometimes you can just let the match breathe. But I hope the viewers at least enjoy my perspective and pick up a thing or two.
No, I think you do a fantastic job. And as you were describing that, you made me think a little bit of the game style of Leylah Annie Fernandez, who obviously, had the phenomenal finish to her season, really carried Canada to that Billie Jean King Cup victory. And someone who is maybe smaller in size on the court, but I feel like she does do a bit of that chess in her matches. She's effective at moving the ball around. Maybe what did you see from her specifically at Billie Jean King Cup? And then if you look kind of at 2024, what do you think maybe she is capable of with the tools in her game?
Look, like, I think that she plays in a way that is very challenging to play against, especially indoors. She's very much a timing player. She suffocates her opponents with time. And the great part about indoor tennis is your timing is less challenged by the elements. You don't have to deal with wind. You don't have to deal with the sun. And they were in a place where there was no altitude, right? So it was really just true bounces and very much Canadian conditions, right? So
Mhm.
that's the environment that her game thrives in. So specifically for the Billie Jean King Cup, I mean, she just had the perfect stage for her game style. And on top of that, we know that Fernandez is so clutch. She loves playing for her country. That's her best tennis, her best performances arguably come at the Billie Jean King Cup. I know also the
Yep.
US Open finals. She, was kind of a giant killer in that sense. Played amazing tennis during that Grand Slam. But consistently that girl shows up at the Billie Jean King Cup and predominantly has had to compete in indoor hard court settings, which has been a huge favor for Canada. And I feel she's been very successful in that setting. I don't think she's lost very much at all, to be honest with you. Um, and then I think in terms of 2024, I mean, we know what her potential is. She knocked out Vondroshova at the Billie Jean King Cup
Hmm.
finals. She made the US Open finals, beating a number of good players back to back to back. We know that she has the tennis to compete at the top level. Um, the challenge, I think, for Fernandez is because her game is so timing based. She suffocates her opponents. She hugs the line, the baseline, excuse me. Very much relies on her timing, and don't really see her have that plan B of backing off and giving herself space when she needs to very often. So I think that when she's feeling herself, she's super dangerous because her targets are also very aggressive. She's not one of those players that's going to hit like a million balls and big targets and wear her opponents down. She's going to go for her forehand line. She's going to go for her
Hmm.
backhand cross, and she's going to try and use those shots by setting them up with her slider wide, for example. Like that's one of her best plays. Um, so she's always going to be looking to hurt her opponents and do that, which is what she needs to do. I think the key for her is going to be really dialing in and having her timing on her side as much as possible. I think that's where for example, clay is more challenging. There's a lot of, bad bounces, and
Yep.
the ball's a lot slower. So she has to generate her own power instead of, just being able to redirect and use the pace. I think also being super fit is going to be important for her, because your timing can be really helped with good footwork and good setup. So being healthy is really important. I talked a lot also about how when she had that really bad foot injury, that stress fracture, especially as a shorter player, that's a very, very debilitating injury, because we rely on our foot speed and our footwork
Hmm.
to be able to get us, the wins. We aren't going to be blowing off, popping off like 130 mile an hour serves like Serena and, um, some of those players would. We have to be precise. We have to be really speedy.
Yep.
So a foot injury like that, definitely impacted her. And I think that's also what caused her to take so much time and have those ups and downs to come back, because you have to find your timing and find your trust in your legs again and all that. So I think it's going to be really important for her to just stay healthy. Really important for her to be very dialed in when she's competing, so that her timing is on point. Because if she doesn't have that, her game struggles a lot, because she stays super aggressive. She doesn't really go to much of a plan B. I really think though too that the more she plays doubles, which I feel like she's been doing, I think that's really going to help her singles game. Because she's sort of added a whole new element to her singles game with being able to come forward and finish the ball off at the net a lot and quite comfortably. And I think that that's really going to help her. So I think those three things are going to be pretty key for her this year.
Yeah, and I love her partnership with Taylor Townsend. Those two play off one another really, really well. I saw a really interesting drill actually that I know Leylah does when you speak of that timing. She calls it the chair drill, that they set up a chair just behind her when she's hugging the baseline. And the rule is her racket can't come back and hit the chair. So it's just like, as you said, suffocating the opponent and taking that time away. We saw now you're really involved with juniors, which is fascinating and great. And we saw the breakthrough of Marina Stakusic on that stage at Billie Jean King Cup. Maybe tell us a little bit about the progress of a couple of the juniors, as you mentioned, Kayla Cross, who we've seen be successful already as a young junior, and others like Vicky Maboko and some really coming up quickly for Canada.
Yeah, so Marina Stakusic obviously had a dream Billie Jean King Cup debut. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better debut than that, really. She kind of, just knocked off opponent after opponent. The only person she lost to was a Grand Slam champion. And then they won the damn thing, which was unbelievable. But the lead up to it, which a lot of people don't know, is that she was out for half the year due to an injury, which was a lot and really challenging. And then she kind of built up her momentum leading up to Billie Jean King Cup, won a few tournaments, one of them being the Tevlin Challenger in Toronto, which was indoors hard. So it was a really good lead up. She kind of had a ton of momentum going. She had a ton of momentum going into the Billie Jean King Cup. And I've always liked Marina. Even years back before she was competing on tour in any way and still on the junior scene, I loved her temperament. I still love her temperament. I think internally she internalizes a lot of things. But she's always been so, I thought, chill. She kind of laughs when I tell her that. I'm like, you're just so calm on the court. She's like, really? I don't feel calm. But whenever we've trained together, she's just had this really like easygoing vibe, which it's I find is a huge asset, because competing on tour week in and week out, year after year, there's so many highs and lows. And I find the most successful players are the ones that they don't go too up and they don't go too down emotionally. And I
Mhm.
find that their peaks and valleys are quite small. It's more like hills and troughs. Um, and the ones that can maintain that for a long period of time, I find are the ones that are most successful. But the ones that like live and die by their result or how they played, it's a really stressful career. I'm speaking from experience. I was more of the peaks and valleys and sort of got better at being more in the hills and troughs by the end of my career. towards the end. And I think that Marina Stakusic has that type of maturity already. And I know there's things that she'll keep improving. She's so young, but I think that type of energy and mentality on the court and attitude really served her. And I think that that's going to continue serving her. I mean, she's struggling with an injury again. We haven't seen her compete yet this year, and she's on track to be coming back soon, but she is struggling with an ab injury again. So, if whether it's a phase where she's gonna have to battle through some of these injuries, and then hopefully stay healthy because she's still young and growing and developing. So, could definitely be that. But if she is someone that could be more injury prone, I think her attitude is going to help her a lot to stay successful while dealing with adversity. So that's really sport. It's just how well can you go from adversity to adversity, without the loss of enthusiasm. And then the ones coming up the pipeline, Kayla Cross, for example, I know her really well. I've known her since she was quite young. And she's great. She's also been battling with injuries. Had a lot of stuff that she's had to face over the last year, which is unfortunate. So whenever she's kind of gotten some momentum, she's gotten sidelined and had to come back. So, but that's sort of also just part of development. Some people are luckier than others, but she's a good athlete and she's got good people around her. So I'm hopeful that, she'll come through all of it. And she is competing now full-time on tour. So she's going to have to be grinding on that ITF circuit for a little bit. And we hope to get her out of there soon. She had a good result the other week, beating Whitney Oswego,
Oh,
who
yeah.
I can never pronounce her name, but she's pretty
Yep.
good, and I thought that was a really great win for her. And then Vicky Mboko, she's had a ton of promise, and she's had some good results for her. Being so young. And I know she's also kind of changed her coaching situation. I think she's based out of Europe now, so that's going to be a bit of an adjustment. She's also struggled with injuries a lot in her career so far. So I'm hopeful that she kind of manages that training load because she's a hard worker. She likes to, train and train and train some more. So sometimes, that can also be contributing to injuries. So hopefully, there's a good balance with that so that we can see her out there competing. And then, yeah, I'm predominantly also, not predominantly, I would say, but half and half. I'm kind of with like that age, like around Kayla, but then I've also been in the last couple of years involved with like the 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds. So that's been fun too. I love it. I love the challenge. I also coach my 4.5-year-old niece, which is like
Nice.
literally the hardest thing I've ever done, but I love it. Apparently I know nothing. So
Okay. That's hilarious. I wonder for you, coaching, well, 4.5 is a completely different story, but even younger, sort of that age of, 13, 14, for you, you had so much success as a junior. I think you were world number two in the country, under 14, and having a lot of that success right away. Do you remember sort of those years, like when you were playing back then, were you always dreaming like, I want to be a pro tennis superstar, and what do you find their mentality is at this stage?
Well, at their age, yeah, I was thinking I was going to play on tour. Well, their age, sorry, at 14,
Yeah.
12, 13, 14, I was thinking that for sure. Um, I at one point did entertain going to university in the States. Um, and speaking from my experience, I I actually wish I lost more when I
Mm,
was younger. And I say that because I think the way I won a lot,
yeah.
but I didn't win in the way that was going to help me long term. I was really consistent, kind of hit a lot of those like higher moonbally things to drive people nuts. And, I wish that I would have sacrificed some wins to, try and just really get more confident in building weapons. So make more mistakes as a kid, but then as you get older, you don't really make those mistakes anymore. It takes a lot of reps to get good at hitting like, really aggressive shots consistently in the court under pressure. So that's my story. That's my, you know, how do I say it, advice to myself if I could go back, and kind
Okay.
of my advice to the younger ones too in that age group is, it's really important, obviously, to stay healthy. But more than anything, of course, you want to win. That is important because if you're not winning, it's tough to want to keep going. You kind of feel like, why am I doing this? So winning's important, but the development is so much more important, and having developmental goals because you don't, and I say this to players in that age group is, do you want to peak at 14 or do you want to peak when you're competing on tour at like 25, 26, 30,
Hmm.
whatever, there's Grand Slam champions now that are a lot older. So, um, when I kind of bring that perspective, it makes them think a different way. Because when you're that age, all you do is think about the moment, and, you don't know anything else. But I have that experience, and I just try my best to be like, it's really important that you focus on being do something today that's going to take you one step closer to being that best version of yourself on the court in like 10, 15 years from now, like one step closer to being that person. Let's try not to regress or do things that are going to build bad habits.
That's really good perspective. And it feels like you kind of have to go through it to be able to relay something like that, right?
Unfortunately, yeah, you pay, what is it, you pay for wisdom with youth, right? So
There you go. There you go. I want to ask you, I mean, it's weird for me to call you a veteran player anyway. I mean, I'm a couple years older than you, I think, but I have to ask about just the Australian Open, and there was a couple incredible success stories in doubles by older players, which I thought was just so cool to see. Sei Sui of Taiwan at 38, she wins the mixed double slam and the women's double slam, just unbelievable. And then 43-year-old Rohan Bopanna, not only reaching world number one, but also winning his first men's Grand Slam title. Do you get inspired by stories like these?
I think it's amazing. I get inspired? No, I'm
Okay.
sorry. That's
No,
probably
you
not
don't
the
have
answer
to.
that I want. But I'll tell you why.
Hmm.
Uh, Personally inspired, is just because it's really painful to play tennis when you're older. It's not like your teens and early 20s where like you just do some wrist circles and
Yeah.
a couple of squat jumps and then you're ready to go.
Hmm.
Now I feel like my freaking warm up and prehab and rehab and all the habs
Yeah.
take longer than my actual training, So, and I'm 33, I'm gonna be 34 later this year. So I'm sitting here, I'm thinking of Sue Wei, who's 38, and Rohan, like, he's 43, right?
Yep.
I'm just like, God, you guys, like, how do you do it? It's
Yeah.
it's so painful. So I'm not inspired. I think of tremendous discomfort and pain because that's been my experience since I've turned 30, 31. Um, but hopefully they're a lot more fortunate than me in that way. Which it seems like they are, at least in that way, because they're obviously like playing a ton of matches, and Sue Wei winning mixed and women's doubles. I mean, that's unbelievable. That's a lot
Yep.
of tennis in the heat. So I think it's amazing. There are a select few group that just seem to, I don't know, they found the fountain of youth or something, and they're just staying young forever, which is amazing. Hats off to them. I think it's unbelievable. And, if you can, that's the thing that I find really cool is that if you can stay healthy and be able to draw on all your wisdom and experience, I mean, that's the ultimate, right? Because, most people have all that knowledge at their age. They just don't have the physical ability to compete at that level anymore, but they do. And I think that
Yep.
that's unreal. That's something you really like, you can't teach, you can't pay for, right? So that's unbelievable. Great job for them.
Yeah, it's really impressive. I remember, I think I was waiting to speak with Bautista Agut a couple summers ago. He's in his 30s now, I think maybe 34, 35. And he played like a 2 hour or so match. And the PR guy was saying like, oh, he has to do physio. He did physio for an hour. And I was like,
Yeah.
how does he put himself through this? So he's probably doing that after any given match. Like it's required for him to keep playing on tour, which I thought like that must be so challenging to do, especially the length of the calendar. It's crazy. Um, I want to ask about Gaby Dabrowski. I mean, you have experience obviously playing with her, and now, of course, she's having so much success with Aaron Routliffe, the U.S. Open title, semifinals recently in Australia. Um, what makes Gabby's game particularly strong in doubles, and how is it that she seems to be able to go partner to partner and find a great recipe for success again and again?
Yeah, so she's had a lot of success with Aaron recently. They've found a way to kind of really move well together on the court. You see they've got a very clear goal when they're playing doubles together. Basically, get to the net ASAP. Try and start the point aggressively if possible. If not, chip lob, get to the net. Really. And then once they're in the net, they close really hard. Gabby's done a great job of over the years. She's got a really good overhead, so she can kind of afford to close that hard and still be able to get a lot of the lobs. Erin really tall too, so she covers the court well, and she's improved a lot, Erin, over the years. I played doubles with Erin a couple of times as well, and I can see like how much she's improved. So they obviously have found like a very good training routine, and they
Hmm.
figured out their patterns and plays, which is great to see. And it's nice to see, Erin like has always had a ton of potential, and it's great to see her really kind of realizing it in doubles for sure, which is cool. And the things that Gabby's done really well, she's I actually find that Gabby's the most dangerous when she doesn't have time. The more that she doesn't think, if that makes sense, like you hit
Yeah,
fat balls to her, quick reflexes when she just literally has to react and it's pure instinct. I actually think she's the most dangerous. When you hit high loopy things, that's where when she's got a lot of time to think, that's where I found that um, that's probably where she struggles most, to be honest, with ground strokes. If she has
yeah,
an overhead, obviously she'll put that away. And doubles is, perfect for that. The points are really short, the game's really fast, especially if you force yourself up at the net, then you're always kind of in that environment of just having to figure it out and go purely on instinct. She has great hands. She's super athletic. She's a really strong girl, so her serves are pretty powerful, and she's able to generate a lot of power just from having the strength that she has. And I think one of the things that has served her very well has been that she's been relatively injury free. I know I've heard that she had some plantar fasciitis stuff, which I know a lot of players struggle with. It hurts, but it's not like you know, a an ACL surgery where
hmm
a sideline for 9 months. Like, it's painful, it's uncomfortable for sure. Something usually you can play through, which she was able to do. And I know she's also had some back stuff, but which can be pretty serious, but she's managed that. So, for the most part, she's been pretty healthy most of her career, which is huge. I know a
yeah,
lot of people don't get that. And because of that, she's had a lot of experience, right? So she's played many, many matches in many, many settings with very different, types of partners. So because she can draw on that, she has, I would say, been pretty successful. And also I find that once you get to the top in doubles, really in singles too, but especially in doubles, it's a lot easier to stay up there, because even if you don't really have a good chunk of the year,
yeah,
if you win one or two matches here and there, it's a lot of points. You win one match in a Grand Slam, that's semifinals of of some WTAs, whereas like if you win one round in a challenger, that's like,
yeah.
10 points or 8 points. So it is a lot easier to stay up at the top, I find, once you're up there. And as long as you stay healthy,
hmm
you don't usually, it's tough to drop out, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, and now Gabby and Aaron 5 and 6 in the world, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
Good chance to be inside the top 10 throughout the year. I'll ask one more question, and maybe we can finish with some rapid fire just for fun. But I'll ask just for 2024, maybe which of the women's players do you particularly like to watch today or follow right now that you're sort of impressed by their game?
You know, that's a really good question. Um, One person I was really happy to see do well actually recently was Kostyuk.
Hmm.
It's probably not the answer you would think, but I always really liked how she played or plays. I feel like her backhand could be much better than it is. I don't know why that shot hasn't been worked on more. She's really tight here, and I feel like she could be a lot looser through her strike zone, but her forehand's world class. She's got a great serve. She's really athletic. I think, definitely what goes on between her head during matches is what impacts her more than anything, I think. But I feel like she's got a lot of potential. So it was nice to see her do well. And I hope that she can build on it and just get more emotionally mature out there on the court. I think Sabalenka's been playing incredible. She's really found her gear out there, and she's able to just maintain it, at least Australian Open, and just more consistently, because we saw her being quite a roller coaster for a little while, with her serves, for example, tons
Yeah.
of double faults in matches and everything. So that's been really cool to see. I'd say probably those two right now I like watching. I also like watching Rybakina. She's great. I like Mukhova a lot too.
Yeah.
She's really fun.
Yeah.
And then yeah, I think it's cool now. You sort of see different winners a lot, but I think Sabalenka's really been one of the more dominant players, and Swiatek as well too, which has been really fun. What was your second question?
Oh, I mean, you pretty much answered
Oh,
it.
okay, perfect.
Yeah, you got it. I'll mention actually because we were talking about Marina Stakusic. When I spoke to her last year, I asked her favorite women's player, and she actually said Rybakina, and it was just funny because her mentality and temperament on the court reminded me of Stakusic, very similar, like incredibly
Yeah.
even keeled and not much emotion. We'll finish with a few fun rapid fire questions just to learn a little bit more about you. Would you consider yourself a morning or a night person?
Morning.
Cats or dogs?
Both.
That's
I
fine.
I love dogs,
Mhm.
but I find I had a cat. I also find myself watching funny cat videos sometimes, just like when I need to laugh. So I like
Nice.
both of them. I'm an
That's
animal person.
yeah, that's cute. What's your favorite tournament to visit and play?
Rome.
Nice.
Yeah,
If you could borrow any player's shot in the game, whose would it be?
it's a good question. Right now, I'm gonna go with Alcaraz's forehand. He just
Nice.
hits the coolest shots. And
Yeah.
he can do the drop shot so well. I
Oh
don't know.
yeah.
I just love him.
Um,
He's my favorite. I love him.
he's incredible to
Whenever
watch.
I'm on the booth, and we get to talk Alcaraz, I'm like, me, I take the Alcaraz hit. I want to talk about Alcaraz.
Nice. Best doubles win of your career.
The tournament was, I would say, Rome. That was amazing. We won, like, I think in almost every match we played, we had to beat a Grand Slam champ team. So we did great. Best win. Uh, it's tough. We beat Sue and Mertens in that tournament.
Wow.
They're world number ones at the time. And then in the finals, we beat Maddox Sands Pegula in the first round, which was also tough. We beat Coco Gauff and Kudermetova in the quarters. And then the finals, we beat Mladenovic and Vondroshova. Mladenovic has won a bunch of slams.
Yep.
Vondroshova's, no slouch. So I don't know. It's tough to
What a
pick.
run. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a pretty good run.
Best singles win of your career.
I think the best match I ever played was I won a $100,000 tournament leading up to Roland Garros one year, I think in 2014. And I'd beaten a lot of good players en route to doing that. In the finals, I beat Timea Baczynski, who was top 10, like not much longer after that. 2-2. I felt like I couldn't do anything wrong. I also beat Kiki Bertens the round before, and she was ranked quite high. Joe Konta the round before that.
Wow.
Putintseva the round before that. So it was just like a lot of good wins back to back to back to back. I thought I played really well there. I'd say that tournament that it was like in the south of France. That was
Nice.
that was a good one.
If you could meet any person in the world right now, who would that be?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Um, so many options.
Are you thinking athlete or celebrity or?
I I I don't know. This is so cheesy to think. The first thing I was thinking is like my future husband. I would love to meet.
That counts. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I can't think of anyone. I know for a while I would have said John Wooden. I really loved him. He's like a basketball
Yeah.
coach.
Hmm.
I love his books. I learned a ton from reading them. So I can go with that. I'd be
Sure.
pretty happy with meeting John Wooden. Yeah.
Cool. That's a very unique answer too. That's great. I
Okay,
like that.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. We'll go with that one. And my
Yeah.
future
Well,
husband. I'll take
sure.
that.
Sure. Yeah. Two in one deal. Sharon, always a pleasure to have you on Matchpoint Canada. Thanks so much for your perspective in the game and all you've brought to Canadian tennis as well. It's been a pleasure watching you when you play.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, tennis fans, you are listening to Match Point Canada, the official podcast of Tennis Canada. We're also members of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network, back with yet another episode as we continue on really in the hardcore portion of the season. Mike, I don't know about you, but I actually quite like the February stretch of the tennis calendar, which sort of leads us nicely into that Sunshine Double, which is sort of our next big stretch of the season.
There's some fantastic tournaments this time of year, and I know people think of the bigger ones from the Aussie Open to then waiting for Indian Wells and Miami, but there's some great stuff in February too, and you kind of see who's making adaptations to their game after the Aussie Open. There's still a lot of jockeying for position. I feel like, despite the fact that the rankings are ongoing over 12 months, I feel like there's still a lot of sort of, yeah, players who want to, even if they didn't get off to maybe the best start they wanted in January, they're trying to make a statement and show to themselves, to their teams, to their fans, that 2024 is still going to be a positive step forward for them.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have, a little bit of clay in South America where Carlos Alcaraz is actually returning this week. We have a bunch of indoor tennis with Rotterdam. Just had Abu Dhabi, Doha continuing. So a lot happening. This week, had a chance to catch up with Canadian tennis player, former really strong doubles player, achieving the WTA finals just a couple of years ago in Sharon Fichman.
Yeah, and I missed out on this one, and I know it's going to be a great interview when I feel a sense of regret that I can't be there to make it, and that's how I feel when Sharon's there and I'm not able to be a part of it. But you had a great chat with her. I wouldn't have expecting anything else between the two of you. She's a wonderful guest and not only a fantastic tennis player, but she's got a great analytical mind for the sport as well, as we've seen in her broadcast work during Billie Jean King Cup and National Bank Open when she's not able to play. And it's crazy to me how quickly time goes by because I thought it was 2022 when she played her last match up until now, but it was actually November of 2021 when she played the WTA finals with
Yeah.
Julianne Elmos, and that's already over 2 years ago. So time really flies, but she hasn't been sitting still. She's definitely keeping busy, and you got to ask her quite a bit about her coaching progress that she's making, both with juniors and professional players too.
Yeah, look, she's still heavily involved, which I think is great for Canadian tennis all around. And as you said, great analytical mind, which comes through when she is in the broadcast booth as well. I'll let you listen in on my conversation with Canadian tennis player Sharon Fichman. There you have it, my conversation with Sharon Fichman. And I love her breakdown when obviously she knows the Canadians really well, like Gaby Dabrowski, who she's played alongside, like Leylah, but just the way she describes what they do so well on the court and how they kind of operate, I find fascinating. Just seeing that perspective from a really good pro player and someone who obviously could be a phenomenal coach if she wanted to be to somebody full time, I feel.
And you know, one of the restrictions or limitations I feel like to when I'm watching her do her broadcast work, her analysis on the TV telecasts of the tennis matches is I wish I could hear as much as what I just heard from her in that interview with you.
Right.
And she mentioned it, that sometimes she gets it in her ear that, oh, Sharon, you can't speak as much because, of course, tennis purists and whatnot, we want to watch the tennis without too much commentary. But
Sure.
it's great then to get her in a podcast format where she can elaborate and go into detail because she's just got so much to say. And yeah, I felt like you could have gone for another half hour and we'd still be wanting more. And that's the sign that you've got a great guest on the podcast. And Sharon's certainly been one for us many, many times over the years. So fortunate to have her back again. I thought that was really nicely done.
Yeah, no, she was great. Made things easier for me with her long form answers, which were terrific. Obviously, it must have been special for her just experiencing that in the broadcast booth, Canada's breakthrough win at the Billie Jean King Cup, to be broadcasting that title, because we know from the past she's played such a pivotal role playing. Previously known as Fed Cup, of course, and representing her country, and knowing just how meaningful that can be and seeing it all come together just this past November must have been really special for her.
And I don't think regret's the right word, but it would have been nice to see Sharon there because of all she's done for Canada over the
Yeah.
years. Like we were happy to see Jeannie Bouchard there, even though
Hmm.
in like a supporting role, but just great to see her as part of that team with all she's done for Tennis Canada, since she turned pro, and even as a junior, really putting Canada on the map, in many ways. Same as with Milos, would have loved to see him be more of a part of that Davis Cup team over some of the successes, but injuries obviously kept him away. These are the players that have really set the bar for Canada, that have done so much. When you think about it, Sharon's last professional match up to this point was that WTA finals. And, we hope we see her back on the court again one day. But even if not, the fact that she got to experience a moment like that really, to me, solidifies her as one of the best doubles players our country has ever seen.
100%. That's very well said. And boy, I remember that WTA finals because we had the just unbelievable atmosphere in Guadalajara. That was one of the WTA finals hosted in Mexico, where I think everything kind of went right. We've had a bit of issues with that event the past couple of years, but it went very well there. And it was like a soccer match. I remember watching her doubles match with Olmos because Juliana Olmos, of course, being Mexican, they had such support from the crowd. It was just electrifying to watch. So I'm sure that's something she remembered. It was cool getting her to reminisce on some of the biggest wins of her career as well at the end of
A
the
smart,
conversation.
smart move when picking a doubles partner. Get a partner that if you qualify for the finals, you're going to have that home court sort of advantage. Of
Hmm.
course, with the WTA, it's kind of hard to plan that far ahead because they often haven't picked the location until the last minute. So
Yeah,
I couldn't resist that one.
no,
But
that's fair.
yeah, Mexico's a wonderful tennis destination. Great fans. You just got to do proper planning and give people enough notice, I think, to buy tickets and get to the event. But hopefully
Yeah.
this year we'll see something a little bit more organized. I should also say that Sharon's been kind enough to offer to hit with me at some point, but I feel a little timid in pulling the trigger on that one. I want to get in like some practice
Oh
before I
man.
go and embarrass myself, and I just don't have
Can we
time
get
during the winter to do that.
can we
So,
get video of it? I think that would be a cool segment, maybe a little coaching.
okay, I'll take some video, but maybe only share it with you. I'm not sure if I'm ready to publicly embarrass myself to that level with our listeners here.
Well, there goes my plan. But let's move on and talk some WTA action. I mean, we have the first WTA 1000 of the season starting this week, but just coming off the Abu Dhabi Open and Elena Rybakina already winning her second title of 2024, which is very impressive. And then you think about it, and it in a sense almost gets glossed over because of the flop that she had in Australia at Melbourne, losing to Blinkova in the second round. But I thought it was sort of a prompt reminder for her and the rest of the tour. I'm still one of the best players in the world, hands down.
Yeah, I mean, don't we get hung up a little bit too much probably on the results at the majors? And
Yeah,
after Australia, you got to wait, February, March, April, like 4 months. It's crazy that it's that long, actually, but you got to wait 4 months for the next major. Well, guess what? There's tons of great, tournaments and matches and action that's happening in between. And I don't think I need a reminder of what a fantastic player Elena Rybakina is. Just like, we'll talk a little bit later about Jessica Pegula, who went out early in Australia, but I still expect big things from her this year. And look, I think it just speaks to the incredible depth that exists in professional tennis that you could go out and if you're not at your A game, maybe you're still adjusting to the time differential in Australia. Maybe the heat is affecting you. Maybe you just don't bring your best on any given day. and there's someone out there that's going to take you down if you're not in your peak form.
Yeah, exactly. And Rybakina is the type of player who has the ability to take the hands out of your racket. Was an interesting tournament, a sad one, I'll say, for Ons Jabeur, and a lot of people were talking about this online, that she lost in the quarterfinals to Beatrice Haddad Maia, and mid-match was noticeably in tears on the court and wiping away tears, between service games. She's been dealing with, I think, a few injuries, maybe to the back, maybe to the leg, from my knowledge. But you sort of wonder still for a player like that if she's carrying a bit of scar tissue from last year's Wimbledon loss in the finals. It's a tournament she's dreamed of winning her entire life. Back-to-back finals at Wimbledon. She revealed as well that had she won Wimbledon this past year, she and her partner were planning on having a baby, and that's basically what they would do to celebrate. And you feel like that she's carrying so much emotional weight from that loss that it's really it feels like I'm not watching the same Ons Jabeur in 2024 that we've seen in the past.
Yeah, and that revelation, that honest revelation, was really hard to hear. Your heart goes out to anyone in a situation like that, because you realize and you remember that these aren't robots that are out there on the court. As much
Hmm.
as we critique them when their forehand or their overhead or their volleys aren't quite hitting the mark, these are people just like you and I who are dealing with life outside of their careers and their jobs. Just like our jobs don't define us necessarily. I mean, there's more important things that are happening aside from hitting a yellow tennis ball across a net. And so, whether it's remnants of the emotional ups and downs that she's been through, whether it's maybe her body not being in peak form right now, and the frustrations of maybe a nagging injury or something like that's concerning at the start of a season. You really got to have a little bit of empathy, I think, for these players and all that they're going through on and even more so off the court.
Yeah, well said. Qatar already underway. The WTA 1000. Pretty much everybody there. Arina Sabalenka, I mean, she can take as much time off as she wants after winning that second consecutive slam in Australia. But Iga Swiatek, the top seed, we know she plays unbelievably well here. Coco Gauff, number two. A big win actually for Naomi Osaka, I will say. She gets the rematch with Caroline Garcia, who she lost to in the first round in Melbourne, and gets a really solid, you can maybe say statement win, 7-5, 6-4, taking out the 15th seed. We should really talk about, though, Leylah Annie Fernandez. Tough draw, gets the 12th seed Ludmila Samsonova, and as we record on this Monday, getting the victory 7-5, 7-6. So Leylah looking good and bouncing back pretty quickly after going out earlier than we anticipated in Melbourne.
A little reminder of what she's capable of, that she can knock off the best players in the world, because we feel very strongly that she is one of the best players in the world. And maybe a little reminder for us that we should knock on that door and give her an invite back on Matchpoint Canada, because
I agree.
I can't remember off the top of my head when it was, but I feel like we're due, and I feel like we usually have like an early season interview with her. So it'd be great to have her back. One other thing I wanted to just mention about the Osaka Garcia match is, we often talk about when players are coming back, how difficult it is for them when they face top players like a Caroline Garcia. But the opposite is also true. And I don't know about you, but I feel like Caroline Garcia, who's been consistently ranked in the top 20 over the last few years, doesn't she always seem to draw these players that are just coming back to action, who have
Yeah,
incredible talent, even though they don't have the seed next to their name? Like, I feel like she's played Bianca a bunch of times, Leylah
Leylah
Annie
a few times.
Fernandez a bunch of times, Osaka now twice already this season. I mean, just as much as those returning players look at the draw and they're like, oh, face palm, this is going to be difficult, Garcia must be wondering what the tennis gods have against her too when she's got to face these players.
Oh my goodness. Especially, and I think this is a huge difference that we see men's and women's side in parity, sometimes Grand Slams versus other tournaments, is best three out of five, that sort of extra space of time. If you're struggling early in a match and maybe you are the slightly better player, you have that extra time to recover. We know how well Novak Djokovic uses that. the format of a Grand Slam, it's just like any other women's tournament throughout the year. So if you're not sharp early, you can go home. And then, I mean, if you're not A plus tennis, facing four-time Grand Slam winner Naomi Osaka, who's now back and seems to be finding her form, you get sent home as well. And this is such a challenge when you get a tough draw on the WTA side because Osaka played a great match, 3 for 3 on breakpoint opportunities versus Garcia, 1 of 8. I think tells the story. And maybe Osaka, this could be a stepping stone for her in her season. Like she's getting going, beats a top 20 player, and suddenly feels confident and loose. And I think that's sort of what Philip Bester, our guest that on our previous episode, was talking about, right?
Well, you made the segue I was about to make, which was, yeah, maybe it's the Philip Bester effect, which
Yep,
as her main hitting partner and I would say like sort of a confidant as well, as he mentioned in the interview that we shared last week. There's a whole lot going on there, and I think it's super exciting that we've got a Canadian who's in the camp there and is going to be along for the ride and a very big part of that ride this year for Naomi Osaka. It was great to have him on last week, and it's really cool to see that Canadian tennis players or former Canadian tennis players in this case are well sought after and respected in terms of what they can do. And look at what Sharon Fichman's doing, look at what Philip Bester is doing. And boy, we're really making a name for ourselves, not just in terms of current players and what they're able to accomplish, but also, in the coaching world as well, which is great to see.
definitely. We've talked about her a lot. I'm just gonna briefly mention Danielle Collins. I mean, last week she pushed Rybakina to 3 sets in their opening round in Abu Dhabi, which is amazing, and opens in Qatar with a 7-5, 6-3 win over Kudermetova, a top 15 player. It's like once she decided this is the end, this is my final year. I mean, we're seeing peak Danielle Collins pushing Iga to 3 sets, pushing Rybakina to 3 sets, beating top 20 players. It's downright impressive. If we shift over to the men's side, we had one more tournament in France, Marseille, the Open 13 Provence. Felix winning one match and then falling in the second round to Zhang Zhijian. Um, a little bit disappointing, but I want to give him maybe a little more time because he's already underway in Rotterdam with a victory under his belt.
Yeah, and Felix is a player that, look, we've talked about it so much lately, and it's been mentioned on social media by many of the top tennis pundits that he is an excellent indoor tennis player. I mean, he's an excellent tennis player all around. We've seen that
Yeah,
in the last few years, but indoors, he's a top five player on the men's tour. Another thing to note is when he's playing in France, he's also got the French crowds who no doubt are going to be behind him, being French Canadian. And it's almost like having a home crowd in your pocket, I suppose, unless you're playing against someone from France. I'd say he'd be the next best thing for those fans to sort of adopt
definitely.
as one of their own. So I'm sure he feels super at ease while he's over there as well, being in an environment where he can speak French day in and day out. And I think again, when you're going on the court and you have all these external factors that are putting pressure on you as well, something as simple as being able to speak your own language while you're there must surely have some sort of effect at keeping you loose as you're stepping out onto the court.
Yeah, oh, I would certainly think so. And watching a bit of this tournament through the week, Ugo Humbert getting the title, the fifth of his career. He's 5-0 in ATP finals. He's moving up now to his best ranking, number 18 in the world, the highest he's ever been. It had me pose the question online that I was sort of fascinated with. Who's the most underrated player on the ATP side right now? I know I used to always talk about Roberto Bautista Agut as one of my picks from years ago. But that has to change. He's not really impacting as much. So I'm shifting my current pick to Ugo Humbert. Credit to him for reaching a career high ranking of number 18, being a perfect 5-0 in ATP finals and playing lights out tennis all week, takes out Hurkacz and Dimitrov in the semis and the finals. Maybe top 10 is even possible for him.
I didn't notice you put that poll out. Was that on our Twitter? Was that on
No, I just what? I posed the question just on my personal Twitter handle, but I also for those who follow Tennis Reddit, I asked the question on Tennis Reddit and had a lot of engagement there. So
Okay, well, so what were some of the names I didn't follow? I got to be honest, I'm trying to stay away from Twitter or X as much as I possibly can. It's a double-edged sword because
it
you want to
is.
promote things that you're doing and you want to engage with people there, but at the same point, I don't know how our listeners feel about it, but like I don't know, I just feel like I've kind of reached my bandwidth is more than occupied in terms of devoting any more time to that. But What
Yeah.
kind of answers did you get in terms of
A couple,
underrated players?
yeah, a couple interesting ones. Roman Safulin, who
Mm.
Canadian fans might remember, he took out Denis Shapovalov in the round of 16 at Wimbledon, so he's a Wimbledon quarterfinalist. He's got a lot of firepower. Karen Khachanov was mentioned there. Someone also said Thomas Etcheverry, which was a different one.
I think of Khachanov, like, I don't know if I'd put Khachanov in the underrated category.
Yeah,
I put him in the maybe underachieving category. Like, I feel like he should be doing more than he is.
he's done a lot at slams, but then you'd think he does have one Masters 1000, but then he had a big lull there for a while. So
I just mean in
I
terms of the consistency, you know?
no, you're right. Tommy Paul was another name, and he just won the Dallas Open. So
I was thinking of this too today to throw in my 2 cents. And
yep.
underrated to me doesn't mean like up and coming. So I went
Hmm.
with an older player in 35-year-old Adrian Manarino, who to me has quietly reached his career best this year, breaking into the top 20 and just a different style of game. And I think it's so impressive that he's been able to do this while kind of taking an alternate route in terms of his style. And I remember last summer at the National Bank Open, I was chatting with the racket stringers, and I'm like, hey, just out of curiosity, who among all the players in the draw, really asks for something different when it comes to racket stringing? And they said Adrian Manarino, who has by far the lowest tension on his racket, about 20 pounds. Put into context, the average ATP player is around 44, 45 pounds. And for him, just I guess the spin he can put on it, how he could basically like catch that ball and like what do they say, like trampoline it back
Hmm.
to the other side of just you put that racket in the hands of most tennis players, I don't know if they'd really even have a clue how to handle it.
It's incredible. I watched him practice actually too last summer at the National Bank Open. Makes it look so effortless. The backswing is very short and he has such great control over the ball. And I you know what? A couple people named him as well on tennis Reddit. He had a great run, of course, in Australia, taking out Ben Shelton before surrendering a couple bagels to Novak Djokovic in an exciting round of 16 match. But that's definitely a great and worthy pick, Adrian Manarino, who just made the semis in Dallas as well. As we wrap up, I mean the big tournament this week, Rotterdam, ABN AMRO, and Felix Auger-Aliassime. He's played great here in the past. He lost in the finals a couple years ago. He won the title here one time, so I feel like it's a place where he can be confident, and he's already opened with a 7-6, 7-6 win over Maxime Cressy. Could get Andre Rublev next.
And we've got quite a few Canadians in the draw too, right? We've got Denis Shapovalov.
Qualified, yeah.
Okay, we got Milos Raonic, who's already posted a 7-6, 6-4 win, which is great to see him back on court after the injury concerns at the Aussie Open, where he couldn't finish his match against Alex de Minaur. And we saw Milos at the Davis Cup just last weekend, 2 weekends ago now in
Hmm.
Montreal. And I chatted with him there off the record, so I won't share anything too revealing, but he did tell me he was planning on coming back for Rotterdam, and he hoped he'd be ready for then, and that he's also planning on playing Dubai, Indian Wells, and Miami in this early hard court portion of the season while he's trying to rebuild his ranking and reach that goal that he shared with us of qualifying for the Olympics this year. So we wish him the best of health, and just nice to see that name in the draws again. It's been so long since we've been able to see it, especially at this portion of the year. It's been several years, really, when you think about it.
Yeah, and this was honestly a good use. He used his protected ranking here, so he gets that main draw spot, which I think was smart. You get into an ATP 500, already has won a match, so he's going to get some ranking points there. And look, he'll get either Bublik or Coric next. That's going to be a tough match, but if he's healthy, if he's serving bombs, he's going to have a chance. And I will also say just credit to Denis Shapovalov for basically doing the grunt work this week, going through qualifying, having to get two qualifying wins to get in the main draw, and now he'll start against Gael Monfils, which is definitely a winnable match for him. But I'd love to see him build up some momentum. I think he needs kind of consecutive matches in a row to feel good about his game.
And him and Monfils should be a super entertaining
Oh
match,
yeah,
just with the style, the explosive style of both of their games,
yeah.
and then looming for the winner, you would have to think is number one seed Yannick Sinner. So that may be realistically as far as the tournament would go for either of those gentlemen. Although having Milos in the top quadrant too would be kind of cool to see a Dennis versus Milos match. I can't remember the last time those two
Oh,
played each
wow.
other. And as much as, we sometimes feel a little awkward about seeing two Canadians go head to head, it would be nice because it would mean that both of them are kind of finding their games, I guess, if they make it to that stage.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe Milos gets the opportunity to challenge someone like Jannik Sinner, which would be, I think, really, really cool. As we quickly wrap up here, Rafael Nadal is on the tennis schedule. He's going to play Doha the following week, which I gotta say I'm a little surprised he's already ready to be back. But that's great news. And just on the women's side, you mentioned, I mean, her disappointment in Australia, Jessica Pegula splitting with her coach of 5 years. I was a bit thrown by this one.
Yeah, and what's funny? I wasn't thrown by it. I mean, not that
No?
I'm sitting here expecting it to happen, but when you think about it, they've been together for 5 years. David Witt had a great coaching pedigree coming from working with Venus Williams for quite some time. And when him and Pegula partnered up, she was ranked outside the top 75 in the world. So great strides that they've made together. And she's a top five player in both singles and doubles, which is incredible. And he's a coach of the year, just what, a couple years removed. But at the same point, 5 years together, maybe things are starting to get a little bit stale. We haven't seen the breakthrough at a Grand Slam in singles where she's been able to make it past the quarterfinals. And clearly going out early in Australia made her, I would imagine, sort of reconsider the whole thing and think maybe it's time for a change. And, often in team sports, we see the firing of a coach as a motivator for the team, as the first option to go to when things are getting a little bit stale. And in tennis, when you think about it, this is like a one-on-one relationship, and 5 years is a pretty long time. And as a player, if you're looking for something to get you maybe just over that hump, and look what happened with Coco Gauff last summer, who's so close with Pegula when she teamed up with a new coach, Brad Gilbert, immediate dividends that took her to a new level, including her maiden Grand Slam title. So maybe that also.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great point, and I guess you could be right. Maybe the perfect time for a change. Just as I wrap up, I'll mention Rebecca Marino winning the 14th ITF title of her career, 100K event in Mexico. So, congratulations to our Canadian. Hopefully, we can speak with her soon about that one. Guys, you've been listening to Matchpoint Canada. Thanks to our guest this week, Sharon Fichman. We will talk to you next time.